Welcome to our podcast on history's most intriguing movements. Today, we're diving into the world of the Anabaptists. Let's get started.
I'm excited about this topic. So who exactly were the Anabaptists?
Well, the Anabaptists were a radical religious group from the 16th century that emerged during the Reformation. They believed in adult baptism, which was, quite controversial at the time.
Right, because most people practiced infant baptism then, didn't they?
Exactly. See, they argued that faith should be a personal decision,
Yeah,
so only adults who consciously chose Christianity should be baptized.
that's really interesting, but why was adult baptism such a big deal back then?
Well, baptism wasn't just a religious ceremony, it was also tied
Right.
to citizenship and social order. So rejecting infant baptism was seen as rejecting societal norms.
So they were kind of shaking the foundations of society?
Exactly. Both the Catholic and Protestant authorities saw them as a threat. Their beliefs in adult baptism and the separation of church and state were, revolutionary,
And
so they were
dangerous.
persecuted heavily.
Separation of church and state? That seems pretty modern for the 16th century.
It really was. They believed that the church should be separate from governmental control, which was a radical idea back then.
I can imagine that didn't sit well with the authorities. How did they respond?
Unfortunately, the Anabaptists faced severe persecution. Many were executed for
That's
their
terrible.
beliefs, often by drowning, which was a cruel twist on their practice of adult baptism by immersion.
That's so grim. But did they have any significant events or uprisings?
Yes, one of the most infamous events was the Münster Rebellion in the 1530s. A group of radical Anabaptists took over the city of Münster
Really?
and tried to establish a utopian theocracy.
A theocracy? How did that unfold?
Well, they believed the second coming of Christ was imminent and sought to create the New Jerusalem. They abolished private property, introduced polygamy,
Wait, polygamy?
and required all residents to convert or leave.
That's extreme. Did the people accept these changes?
Not really. The city descended into chaos and violence. Eventually, both Catholic and Protestant forces besieged Münster. And
Wow.
after a brutal siege, the rebellion was crushed.
What happened to the leaders?
They were executed, and their bodies were displayed in iron cages as a warning.
That's
The cages
harsh.
are still there today, actually.
That's chilling. So did this event define the Anabaptist movement?
Well, it certainly cast a dark shadow over them. But it's important to remember that most Anabaptists were peaceful and focused
Right.
on communal living, pacifism, and spiritual discipline.
So groups like the Mennonites and Amish originated from the Anabaptists?
Exactly. The Mennonites, named after Menno Simons, emphasized nonviolence and simplicity. The Amish are known for their simple, agrarian lifestyle and
Yeah.
resistance to modern technology.
That's fascinating. But considering the Münster Rebellion, do you think their methods were always justifiable?
That's a great question. While the Münster Rebellion was an extreme and unfortunate episode, it doesn't represent the entire movement. It shows how radical leadership can distort ideologies.
So leadership played a significant role in the direction of the movement?
Absolutely. Leaders like Jan Mathis and Jan van Leyden in Münster took extreme measures, but leaders like Menno Simons promoted peace and community living.
Right. It's interesting how the same movement can have such different expressions.
Exactly, it's like two sides of the same coin.
Yeah.
The core beliefs were about personal faith and community, but the interpretation varied widely.
So despite the challenges, their legacy has had a lasting positive impact?
Definitely. They influenced modern ideas about religious freedom and the separation of church and state. Their emphasis on individual conscience is something we value today.
For sure. It's amazing how what was once considered radical is now a fundamental part of many societies.
Absolutely. Their courage to stand up for their beliefs despite persecution is truly inspiring.
Yeah. I've learned so much today. Thanks for shedding light on the Anabaptists.
My pleasure. History has so many lessons for us if we take the time to look.
Definitely.